The CDC has declared a flu epidemic, but as hospitals scramble to contain the outbreak, there's another disease putting children at risk, and it's deadly. Doctors now taking emergency measures to control the terrifying Enterovirus, while Nightline anchor Juju Chang joins a brave 4-year-old who's fighting it with everything he's got.
This year's flu season, already an epidemic, alarming public health officials and perhaps shaping up to be deadlier and more widespread than years past.
Every year you have to be concerned about the flu. You know, some people say it's just the flu, but people die from the flu. 15 children have already died this year from the flu.
This year's flu vaccine, a mismatch, according to officials, leaving nearly everyone vulnerable to this season's strain of influenza. 22 states reporting a surge of ER visits for debilitating flu symptoms.
Flu season is a really difficult time in a hospital, in the emergency room. You can get flooded with patients who come in. Some may just have the common cold, some are going to have the flu.
This is the second round of problems for hospitals. Just months ago, our cameras on the front lines at the University of Michigan as they battle against another respiratory illness that also targeted the most fragile, children. It's called Enterovirus.
Bailey, how you doing? Get your breathing feeling any better? Okay, let me take a listen. Take some deep breaths for me, sweetheart.
Do you have any respiratory distress?
Dr. Marie Lozon and her staff at C.S. Mott's Children's Hospital saw a nasty strain of the Enterovirus sweeping the country that, in extreme cases, caused death.
We added extra doctors and nurses every day and every shift. And we used our existing doctor staff, our faculty staff, and said, guys, we have to run an enterovirus shift.
Before Enterovirus struck, Alan Howe was a typical 4-year-old, goofy and playful earlier this year. But just after this night, Alan caught a common virus, a fever, a nagging cough. But unlike countless others who recover easily, Alan inexplicably wound up in the hospital, paralyzed over 80% of his body, unable even to lift his head.
So this is a tilt table that Alan's in that helps him to be able to kind of stand up because he cannot do that right now.
When we first met Alan, his days were like this, on a feeding tube because his throat muscles are still affected. The sudden onset of paralysis, baffling to the doctors, a nightmare for his mom.
I felt helpless. He was laying in bed and he literally was screaming, "Help me, Mom." And I was just bawling because, you know, I don't know what to do.
What's the hardest part then for you?
Seeing him and pain and just not being able to move.
The team here at C.S. Mott Children's Hospital believe a virus called Enterovirus D68, which caused Alan's cough, may also have caused his paralysis. It comes from the same viral family as polio. Across the country, families are dealing with the aftermath of paralysis like Alan's. Clusters popping up in California, Colorado, then rolling eastward. More recently in Texas and various southern states. Michigan was hard hit.
We now have 7 patients that we've seen present with some type of paralysis, either upper or lower extremity.
Doctors coping with this staggering outbreak as they're trying to crack the mystery of how it attacks.
As soon as the respiratory cycle settled down a little bit, we started seeing children come in with this acute paralysis. And people started to link the enterovirus with that.
Dr. Marie Lozon saw an alarming spike in both enterovirus and paralysis. She started putting the pieces together.
I cannot speak to causation. I am not saying the enterovirus brought about the paralysis, but you can see where the link came.
But as disturbing as the growing number of paralyzed children, enterovirus was also, in a handful of cases, proving deadly.
There have been reported cases of children having enterovirus and dying. That is true, but we have more children die every year from influenza.
Dr. Lozon says this enterovirus season, which began in the summer, is now over. While it's impossible to predict the intensity of next season, she says make no mistake, it will return. Until then, doctors are still learning from the cases they're still treating months later.
And what are they telling you in terms of how much longer it might take?
They really haven't told me that he'll be able to walk out of here.
Twice a day, Alan gets physical therapy, where he's strapped to a gurney to retrain his muscles. His mom says his tears are as much out of frustration as pain.
All right, we're going to count to 5. I'm going to help you straighten. We're going to count to 5, and then we'll be done. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5.
It's tough for a 4-year-old to understand why he can no longer play with his little brother. But amidst the frustration and pain, there's a glimmer of hope.
How much progress have you seen so far?
Well, he already is really able to move all of his extremities against gravity, so that's super good news, and he has a lot of head control now. I mean, he's actually starting to be able to sit some on his own.
And his dedicated medical team still can't answer the ultimate question. Will he ever walk again? Will he ever fully recover?
At some point, do you see him running around, gaining that kind of strength again?
It's difficult to predict for sure. I mean, I definitely think we'll get him moving again. I think we'll probably get him moving on his feet. But whether he's running the same as his peers, I'm not as positive about.
Though there's little known about ways to prevent EVD68, Dr. Lozon says that when dealing with most viruses, our best defense is common sense.
How virophobic should we be right now?
I think that a measure of common sense always makes sense. We have viral surges every year, and now enterovirus is just another of the viruses that we've seen. I think we cover our cough, we use good hand hygiene and common sense. You would never send your child to school feverish and coughing their brains out. And if we do that, we're going to get through this.
Vigilance is key, but rather than panic over a virus we have no cure for, she says we should guard against the ones we can protect against. After months of treatment and therapy, just before Thanksgiving, a long-awaited homecoming. Being home for the holidays may be the best medicine. Alan continues to show progress. A small miracle, Alan's recovered enough muscle tone. He's starting to walk again. A few small steps for Alan, one giant leap of determination. For Nightline, I'm Juju Chang in Ann Arbor, Michigan.